NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory presents the Von Karman Lecture, a series of talks by scientists and engineers who are exploring our planet, our solar system, and all that lies beyond.
Hello, everyone, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. I am Brian White from JPL's Office of Communications and Educations, and welcome to the Von Karman series. It has been a pleasure and an honor to bring these talks to you. In the 1930s, a group of amateur rocket enthusiasts nicknamed the Suicide Squad essentially founded NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Their goal was to do the impossible, to reach beyond. JPL today is the leading center for robotic exploration of the solar system, daily reaching for that beyond and making it possible. From landing on Mars to visiting every planet in the solar system, to Voyager's faint whisperings at the edge of the solar system. The JPL motto, taken from the Man in the Arena speech, is Dare Mighty Things. I am grateful there are these amazing human beings that dare these mightiest of things and create the next. Tonight, we'll talk with one of our robotic mobility engineers about the importance of autonomy in these groundbreaking missions and how they help us with the ever-present question of what's next. And before we go any further, I'd like to introduce our questions co-host for this evening. She is the lead producer for the studio here at JPL. Please welcome Rachel Etheredge. Hi, Rachel.
Oh, thank you. Hi. Thank you so much, Brian, and hi, everybody out there. I just want to remind everyone watching that this is your space program. We want you to be involved with this conversation. So whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook Live or LinkedIn, ask questions in the chat box, and our social media team, who are at the ready, will bring in as many as we can in our talk tonight. And if you don't see the chat box, just reload your page and it should be right there. On a more personal note, Hiro and I have been working closely together for over 2 years now. And I'm just so excited to be able to bring your questions to Hiro, who's our speaker tonight. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And that's a pretty good intro. We're going to get into his bio as we go through the story, but please welcome Dr. Hiro Ono. Hi, Hiro. Hello.
Hello, Brian. How's it going? And hi, Rachel.
It's going wonderfully. Let's just dive right in, because when we're talking about the future, we're talking about what's next, we got to talk about where we came from, right? So Hiro,
Sure.
Tell me how you got here. Tell me how you ended up working at JPL.
Yeah, it's a long story, but that starts when I was 5 years old. My father was basically a space geek, So, if you bring up the first slide, he bought me this telescope when I was 5, and we spent many hours, right? To look at stars, look at planets, look at the moon, bring up the Saturn. That fascinated me. And then when I was 6 years old, this spacecraft called Voyager 2 went to Neptune. That was 1989. Maybe some of the listeners are still remember. That was a sensational, news to me, to my father. We again spent a lot of hours in front of the TV, looking at, watching the news, following what's going on. And I remember one thing that my father told me, right, when watching about Voyager. If you, shrink the solar system, so that the Earth is the size of this tiny marble ball, then how far you think the Neptune would be? 3 miles. Oh, of course, I grew up in Tokyo, Japan, where my accent comes from. So he didn't say 3 miles, he said 5 kilometers. But anyways, can you imagine, imagine that this Earth is, this tiny marble ball, right? And then this spacecraft flew all the way through across the solar system, spending 12 years to get there, reach to this beautiful blue planet and send pictures back. It's so amazing. And, somehow I've heard that this spacecraft was created by this place called JPL. So, since then I thought, when I grow up, I want to build a spacecraft like Voyager. JPL has been a dream place since then, and 24 years later, luckily I arrived at my childhood dream place, and here I am.
So if this is your dream place, how did you get doing? We've talked kind of leading up to this about how you get to do your dream job every day. How did you get interested in autonomy? How did you get interested in this specific part of it?
Yeah, that's more like, maybe there's not singular point, but maybe, one turning point was that, when I was 12, my father gave me this, second-hand laptop. She worked for Toshiba. So that was Toshiba's, I forgot the model number, but that's the one before Windows. So there's no Windows, Macintosh, everything is in command line. So I got his second-hand laptop, and he, also gave me this book about C language, program language. And somehow I got into it. You type in command, you make the program, and then computer moves as I instructed. So that was my first time. What I did that time was basically creating games, right? As all kids do when picking up programs. But then, as I, go to college, grad school, I found my passion to, this machine intelligence. So that's how I come to interested in.
So you're interested in programming. Well, let's talk about why. Let's combine you and the amazing person that you are, and the amazing thing that they're doing here at JPL. Why is this important to exploration?
Yeah, think about who are the best explorers on Earth.
Okay.
It's humans, right? Human beings, because we topped the highest mountain, we dove to the deepest part of the ocean, we flew the sky, we even went to the moon. But, what makes humans the best explorer, right? We are not the species that can run fastest. We are not the species that can, swim, fly.
Yeah.
It's not the physical capability, it's the intelligence, right? It's our intelligence that makes us the best explorer. So now, we want to make the robotic explorer. Of course, our robot has to be physically capable to go through the space, and has to survive the environment for sure. But that's not all, right? We eventually want to explore, want the robots to explore the space like us. So therefore, we need intelligence for those robots.
Well, let's talk about that intelligence. I mean, it sounds science
Yeah.
fiction when you use the phrase intelligence. I mean, is this becoming real? Is this becoming new? What's going on
Yeah.
here? Yeah.
Right? It may sound scary, right? But actually, almost all, maybe all spacecrafts that flown before are more or less autonomous, right? So, if you open up the slide 3, I believe, yeah, there you go. The interesting fact is that the very first spacecrafts that we launched were fully autonomous. Examples are our very first spacecraft, the American first spacecraft, Explorer 1, and Explorer 4 is the one with, kind of pencil-shaped one. Actually, can you move to the next slide? This is an interesting one, actually. This was the very first probe that went to the moon, and its mission was to, take a single photo of the moon. But, around that time, there's no computer on board, right? There's even no receivers, meaning that we cannot send any commands. Once you launch it, the only thing we can do on the ground is to keep receiving the signal from it. So how does it work? How did they plan to take a photo of the moon with the spacecraft, right? They have a sensor that catches the moon's light, so basically it reacts to the moonlight, romantic, right? Then activates the photo resistor or something to snap a which didn't go well, but that was the fully autonomous and possibly dumb spacecraft, way before. And then can you move back to slide 3? Around early 1960s, there's a revolution caused by digital computer. That was the time when digital computer was available for spacecraft for the first time, around the time of Apollo. So now, with the onboard computer combined with receiver, we can first, become capable to send commands to the space that has already been launched before, right? So this was revolutionary because spacecraft was still dumb, but now we become capable of projecting our intelligence, right, to space. Basically, making the spacecrafts our avatar, right? So that enabled us to do much more complex exploration. And there was a time, when Voyager was there. But still, the spacecraft like Voyager has its own onboard autonomy. The example was that, when Voyager 2 was launched, right after that, one of the receiver was dead. So onboard algorithm, was pretty simple if then rule, but it switched to the backup receiver, which saved the spacecraft. And, the Voyager 2 is still flying on the backup receiver for 45 years, which is amazing.
Pretty grateful to hear that as I'm wearing my Voyager 45-year pin right here.
Oh, there you go.
So we're talking about Voyager. We're talking about, where are we now with autonomy? That's an amazing chart, but where are we today?
Exactly. So, this chart is kind of a rough sketch, but we see that the trend is inversed, inverted. Now we observe the increased level of autonomy again, and probably the Perseverance rover, the Mars rover that landed on Mars like 2 years ago or so. I think it's just a little bit more than 2 years, right? I think that's one of the smartest spacecrafts that ever flown through the world so far. Let's go to slide 5. There are a few notable capabilities, but one of them that I was deeply involved was autonomous driving. These days, the cars on Earth start driving semi-autonomously, but the fun fact is that we've been driving on Mars autonomously, at least in part, since I think 15 years ago or so. But for this mission, the Perseverance mission, we knew that we need to substantially enhance the capability of autonomous driving to achieve its goal. So, that's one of my contributions to this mission. This map, it's basically a drive map of Perseverance. We landed on the place called Jezero crater, which was a lake with water, some, I guess, 4 billion years ago or so. Therefore, some scientists suspect that we might be able to find the evidence of the past life that might have existed on Mars here in this place. Anyways, so we landed at the place where this arrow is pointing, and we first moved to the south, moved a bit to the west, and took a few samples. We moved back to the landing site, and then drove kind of counterclockwise to go towards the north-west direction. Each dot on this map represents the position of the rover for each sole Martian day. And note that at the beginning, these dots are pretty dense, right? Meaning that the rover was driving pretty slowly. After we came back to the landing site and then, observed that each dot is very sparse, meaning that the rover was driving pretty quickly. Around that time, rover drove around 200 meters per Martian day, or which is about 100 and I don't know. I'm not good at conversion between meter and feet. Anyways,
you don't have to. You're working for now. You can work in the metric. You don't have to do it in the other way.
Exactly right. Yeah. Anyway, so that was the time when we called Drive campaign. We fully utilized this enhanced autonav capability to push our limits to drive as fast as possible. And around that time, we, as I said, we drove around 200 meters per sol. We up to now we drove about 60% of the distance autonomously, and just a few weeks ago we again broke the record. of the driving distance per plan. That was 655 meters. So we were very happy about how much this new autonomy capability, pushed the boundary of driving on Mars. Let's look at the movie on the next slide. Yeah, this was a time 5 years ago, when we worked on the development of the AutoNav. This is a place called Mars Yard. When we test these things regularly. Summer of 2018 was the hottest summer for us. I spent hundreds of hours with my colleagues, Olivier Toupet, Tyler Del Sesto, Mike McHenry, Mark, my mom, to test them, fix the bag, of this capability. Can you go next, please? And then this is not Mars Yard on Earth. This is real Mars. This is the real movie. Came out from Seoul 360 Drive. That was, I think, about, again, 200-meter drive. Yes, we are driving very nicely. And I think there's one more slide about AutoNav. Yeah, so this is the 3D reconstruction from the driving data I thought from we saw. Yes, so yeah, autonomy is helping Mars rover to drive faster and farther. But another thing to note is that autonomy also helped landing on Mars, which was the capability called TRN, Terrain Relative Navigation, which I was not involved, but that's basically the ability to allow us to land, avoid the dangerous landing site, and land on a safe place. So yes, autonomy means a lot for this Mars rover mission.
So autonomy is huge for right now. It's huge for these missions that we're working on at this moment. Something that these VK talks that we've tried to do is also remind people of the human element behind robotics and autonomy. This is a special mission for you in particular, right? The Mars 2020 mission.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of the personal story. Again, since Voyager, of course, I took a close watch on all the NASA JPL planetary mission, right? Magellan and Galileo, and in 1997, that's when I was 14 years old, I believe. Mars Pathfinder landed on Mars, right? That was the first landing on Mars since Viking. First Mars landing that I've seen, and so I watched on TV. There was this 7 minutes of terror. The 7 minutes right before the landing, where you cannot talk to the spacecraft. So the only thing that the people on the ground can do is to wait. So people waited, right, anxiously, right?
Yeah.
Hey, what's happening? Did it crash on Mars? Did it go well? And the moment they heard from the Pathfinder the confirmation signal of landing, these people literally jumped around, right? Jumped around and yelling around, and some even cried, hugging each other, right? So I was like, wow, I've never seen grown-ups, jumping like kids like that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something that I want to see in the future. And then, actually, I think we have a slide, which is slide 9. Can you move there? Yeah, there you go. That was Curiosity. But then, the next one was Spirit and Opportunity. That was 2004. So I was a junior in college. This happened again, right? So, okay, I thought I want to join them. So after my college, I came to the US for graduate school and got a PhD. And I thought the time is ripe. So I knocked the door of JPL. I interviewed, but I didn't get the offer that time. So I was kind of brokenhearted. I went back to Japan and I got a university job over there. That was 2012. That was when Curiosity landed on Mars. So this picture was from Curiosity. I watched it. I watched the webcast on my laptop in the school cafeteria. And I was like, what I'm doing here, right? I thought I was going to join them, but I'm still on the other side of the screen. So yeah, but then luckily for thanks to a few lucky turns of the events, I got a second chance, and I interviewed with JPO again. That time I finally got an offer. So that was again 24 years after Voyager 2. So after I joined JPL, I worked on Mars 2020 mission on many aspects, and 2 years ago I finally could join the celebration. Except that was during the COVID, so I cannot see it on the lab. Instead, I celebrated from home. But can you switch to the next slide, please? That's gonna be slide 10, I believe. Yeah, so that's when I celebrated with my family in a super messy living room, of course, because my daughter was 4 years old. Your living room must be like this during COVID when you have a girl or boy. Yes, yeah. So yeah, that was my moment of lifetime.
It's a moment of a lifetime, and we all were going through it. But that's incredible that you got to celebrate with your family. I'm just so happy for you because it's never a straight path, is it? Sometimes you have to move to the left and right and go backwards before you can come and get to do your dream job. But let's go back. All right, I want to jump back. I want to get back into this autonomy. I want to get back into science. I want to talk about that record you just said, because 600 meters. You said you didn't like to do we'll do it for you. It's about a half a mile, right?
Yeah, right.
That's a half a mile. Yeah. So what's beyond that? What's beyond Mars 2020?
Yeah, right. It's half a mile. That's the distance, basically to the nearest Trader Joe's from my home. Okay. Yeah. So yes, that is a lot to us, but it's not a lot to compared to how much we can run, how much we can drive on Earth, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, we can do more. There's an example from the past. Can you go to slide 11? In Apollo mission, from Apollo 15 to 17, we used this lunar buggy. Astronauts drove, 10 to 20 kilometers just in a few days. The max speed was 12 miles per hour, which doesn't sound very fast, but remind that this was not on 110 freeway. By the way, you cannot drive 12 miles per hour on 110 freeway when at a peak power. Anyways, that was on the moon, and 12 miles per hour was 100 times faster than the Mars rover. There are many reasons why the Mars rover is so slow, power availability, mechanical reasons, but there's another reason, if you look closely about this picture, it has pretty simple mobility system combined with a very intelligent perception and planning algorithm, but not in computer, on humans neural net, right? That was one of the keys, right? So, the question is, if we can, not completely replicating what humans can do, but at least can we do 1/10 of what humans can do? Can we get a little bit closer to what humans can do than what Mars rovers are doing? So, that's that motivates, some of my research projects. Let's go to slide 12. Yeah, so here's one example. When driving, I'm currently working as a rover driver. I'm a trainee, so I'm being trained. When we're driving the rover manually, we care a lot about terrains. We typically don't want to drive on slippery terrains because in the past our rover got stuck in sand a few times. But for the onboard algorithm, for the autonomous driving algorithm, it only uses stereo cameras, meaning that it can only use geometric information. It can tell that, hey, there are rocks, there are holes, but it cannot tell like humans, hey, there are rocks here, there are sands there. if robots can tell the terrain type by itself, then probably it can drive safer and more efficient, right? So what we did before, can you go to slide 13? So, we trained a neural net, artificial neural net, to, look at an onboard image and basically, classify, hey, where are, drivable rocks and soils, where are slippery sands. I did with my many colleagues, Dig and Nathan, Mike Payton, Michael Swan, with many other people. We implemented that. We, also implemented on a test rover and drove this dried river called Arroyo Seco right next to JPL. It went very well. So that could be one way that we can improve the rover's autonomy. Going to slide 16, please. Another thing that I did with Neil Akawa, Sharon Stafftree, Ethan Yue, and many other people. So we thought we maybe, so the one of the big difference between, the autonomous driving algorithm that we are using for perseverance and human drivers is that human has instinct, right? Right the moment when you see the environment around you, you can instinctively think, hey, that's the rock that you have to avoid. There's an open space over there. You don't have to think much, right? So I thought, can we replicate that kind of instinct by using machine learning? Yes, we can. We can train the neural net to tell which part of the terrains, which path options are more promising than the others, so that it can accelerate the planning algorithm. This is just two of many examples, but there are a lot of possibilities, by applying the latest technologies to, help future spacecraft more, safer and more efficient.
Well, in talking about this and planning this talk, I was thinking about this as I drove home about how I naturally know when to hit the brake. I know how far away I'm going to be. How you said the word train. How do you teach something like this to a machine?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Any of my attempt to teach something to my daughter miserably failed. So I know how hard it is to teach, right? Something to, well, at least artificial neural net is not as rebellious as my daughter. So maybe that, anyways, yeah, but training the artificial neural net, particularly deep neural net, is challenging because it requires huge amount of data, much more than your kids require. So in the case of terrain classification, for example, right, you typically need tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of examples to make it reliable. So where we can get that data, right? So that was one of the challenges that we faced. We tried a few different things, but in the end, what worked very well was to get help from people on the internet.
Okay.
Can you go to slide 14, please? So during COVID, we launched this project called AI for Mars on internet. It's on the site called Zooniverse. Basically, it's like, we said, hey, everyone on the internet, would you kindly help us to create the examples to teach the rover? And actually, many people say, oh, yeah, right? So it's very easy. Anyone can go to the site. You can Google AI for Mars, number 4, stylized, and, open this page, and you can view the real images for Mars. And all you are asked to do is to put these bounding boxes around rocks, around sand. This training data comes to us, which is used to train our neural net, which might be used in future spacecraft. So I'm glad so many people were excited. We got, I think, 50,000 volunteers in total. We got, I think, around 600,000, labels, inputs from people. So I really appreciate, people's passion, to help future spacecrafts, make it smarter.
I like that you use the phrase passion there, because we'll do anything for Mars and for these things. But JPL is more than Mars, right? We talked about Voyager. We're talking about all these other places. Let's go beyond. How's autonomy help us beyond the red planet?
Yeah, of course, Mars is not our final destination. It's one of the closest planets, and beyond the orbit of Mars, there are more interesting things, unexplored, waiting to be explored, right? Can you go to slide 17? One of those fascinating and underexplored worlds are these icy moons of gas giants. Around Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, there are many moons, mostly made of ice or covered by ice. Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, Titan, Triton, and Enceladus. Those are just a few examples. They're fascinating because many of them would likely, not all of them probably, but some of them have subsurface ocean. There are liquid water ocean, right, below this thick shell of ice. Likely Europa, likely on Enceladus, maybe on Titan, maybe on other moons. And some of them, are considered potentially habitable. No one knows if life can live there, if it's there or not. But some scientists suspect that these oceans could be habitable. Among these icy worlds, one of the most fascinating worlds is Enceladus. Can you go to the next slide, please? Slide 18. Enceladus, this is a relatively small moon of Saturn. It's about 500 kilometers across. The surface area is around about Texas. So what makes this world unique is this geysers, found by Cassini when it flew near the south pole of this moon. It found that something was splashing out of this moon to space. It turned out that this is a water vapor, likely coming out from the subsurface ocean, meaning that there are cracks, in the ice shell. There are some conduit or crevasse. I don't know what it is. No one knows what exactly it is, but there is a mechanism, pathway, that water comes out from the interior of this moon to the space, and actually this water vapor forms one of the rings of Saturn. So, it's fascinating in many ways, right? But one reason is that, hey, this could be, a great pathway for us through which we can exploit. Let's explore more with the next slide 19. This is, what scientists imagine the interior of the moon is. Again, as I said, there's a shell of ice below which there is likely a liquid ocean, and around South Pole there is conduit, geysers. So we thought, can we make a tiny robot that can dive into these conduit, goes down all the way to the ocean, and possibly, meet life if there's any. So can you go to the next slide, please? Some years ago, in 2016, my colleague and my friends and I got this, really small funding from a program called NIAC, NASA's Innovative Advanced Concept Program, to take a closer look about this seemingly crazy idea of sending robot down to this, active vents, and studied if it is ever possible or not. Skipping all the way to the conclusion, we found that, of course, no one knows how it looks like below the surface of Enceladus. There could be, infinite number of possibilities, but, there are two, super roughly speaking, the reality could be more complex than this one. But super roughly speaking, there are two possibilities. One is that, that this vent is, wide open. There's a clean interface of the water from which the water boils and somehow accelerated and goes to space. The other possibility is called cryovolcanic model. It's basically inverted rocket nozzle. The high pressure liquid gas mixture goes up the vent and gas expands that propels the jet. We found that this idea of letting the robot going down the vent is likely feasible for open conic model. It would be possible for cryovolcanic model. It is harder. But if the vent size is more than 10 centimeters, which cannot be guaranteed, but given that there seems to be more than hundreds of vent openings, what's the chance that we can find at least one vent that is more than 10 centimeters? Probably is quite likely. So, can you go to the next slides, please? We did some experiments in the working freezer, and also next slide, we run some CFD, computational fluid dynamics, and then we arrived this robot. Can you go to slide 22, please? One more. We felt, okay, so this could be one way to make this happen. A tiny robot, maybe, again, 10 centimeter in width, maybe 30 centimeter in length, has a few limbs. At the end, there are ice screws to stick to the wall so that it's not blown away. Maybe it's going to crawl out of the lander and moves to the vent and go down. Of course, this is not the design of a robot. This is one of many possible designs, and we are actively exploring more promising designs. So this could be a fascinating idea. And then of course this robot is going to go into this vent, which has so many unknowns. Right, you cannot fly your spacecraft above it and make a detailed map. So, it has to deal with uncertainty. It has to move vertically. You have to control this complex robot to do so, and also the environment is dynamic. So there are so many reasons that this robot has to be, again, highly intelligent.
So, Hiro, I want to jump forward and loop back. I want to talk about Voyager again and talk about autonomy in something like this. And if we go to our next image, you can truly see how alone it is out there. Talk to me about something like this and what is truly, after you being here for 34 years after this and all these great things, talk to me about that.
It's amazing, right? It's fascinating that this spacecraft, keeps flying after 34 years. When I was inspired, right? It's still flying beyond the heliopause, into the interstellar space. And interestingly, there's no other spacecraft still that went beyond where Voyager is, right? But surely someday, we should catch up and move beyond, right? We gonna explore the icy moons of gas giants someday. We're gonna go to the subsurface ocean. We're gonna probably go back to Neptune's system someday, in particular its moon Triton, which is very interesting. Maybe KBOs, we know there are many Pluto-sized dwarf planets beyond the orbit of Neptune. Eventually, maybe interstellar space, right? Like TRAPPIST-1 system, which has multiple habitable planets, which may take, hundreds of thousands of years to get there, maybe, So, thinking about Voyager, right? it already happened. Sometimes after a success was made, we often kind of take it granted, right? It's hard to imagine how innovative it was, but if you put yourself from the viewpoint of the past, this idea of ground tour, right? Visiting 4 major planets, gas giant planets, in one mission, which basically what Voyager 2 did, was initially conceived in 1965 by this graduate student named Gary Flandreau. And that time, 1965, what JPL did and what whole world did actually was to send only 2 spacecrafts successfully to other planets, right? One to Venus, one to Mars. And that time, this guy was talking about building a spacecraft that lasts tens of years and going all the way to Uranus and Neptune and eventually to interstellar space. What you're talking about, right? That was the craziest idea at the time. No one believed it, laughed at it. But but it happened eventually. JPL made it happen. So Voyager reminds us that JPL is a place where grown-ups are allowed to dream big, right? And it's a place where those big dreams are turned into reality.
With that reality, before we started this talk, you were holding your child in your arms while you were setting up.
Yeah.
How, when you look at this and look for what's next, not just for this mission, but for all these missions, but for also life, I mean, how is this working for you?
Yeah, I mean, life means my personal life, right? I guess.
Yeah,
Or,
I mean, I can hear it around you too. I can hear it right now live. It's a very
yeah,
exciting life you got. Yeah.
yeah. So why don't you show the last slide? Yeah, that was actually last weekend. The Jupiter and Venus were at conjunction, so I took my daughter to the front yard and pull out this the telescope from the garage and looked at the planets. I'm still getting stars, after 35 years when my father gave me this telescope. Not with my father anymore. With my kids. I like this. I like this a lot to getting stars still. I think for 2 reasons, right? One is that I said JP is a place where we can dream big, but of course, we are not, thinking about big things 40 hours per week every day, right? There's so many, little things to bother, right? Just like any other workplace, hey, this thing was broken, we have to fix that bag. We are running on funding, we have to keep our stakeholders happy. There's so, many little things. But, if I go out in the night and get stars, that kind of let me forget about those little, things and, reminds me why I'm doing this job, where I started, what my big dream has been, right? And of course, it's also, for my daughter, right, to inspire my kids, like my father did for me, like Voyager did for me. We, work hard to, make our big dreams come true, which inspires the next generation, like my kids, so that they can even have bigger dreams. And when they grow up, perhaps they're gonna, work on their own dream. And that's the way that humans make progress.
That is the way that we make progress. Thank you so much, Hiro. There have been a lot
Yeah,
of
thank
great
you.
questions out there on all the platforms, so I'm going to throw it back over to Rachel. How's it going out there, Rachel?
Oh, goodness. Okay, I'll tell you. We're not going to get to every single question. I think we maybe have time for about 5 or so. 4 to 5. But let's see how many we can get through. So,
Yeah.
Hiro, there's so many amazing questions. But
Rachel, can I interrupt you for a second? Your audio is getting a little fuzzy right now, so I'll ask the first one that you've highlighted for me. If you want to reload, and we can ask that back in. So Akshay on LinkedIn wants to know, did you find any differences or surprises in training Perseverance's autonav on Earth and when it started operating on Mars?
Great question. Yeah, maybe the biggest surprise is that it works so well. Right before we activated the autodev, my worry was that, what if my what if my code crashes this, multi-billion dollar rover, but it hasn't happened. It works so well, so yeah, maybe that's a positive surprise that I had.
Very cool. Rachel, you back with us?
I hope so. Am I back?
Yay!
Yes.
You sound great.
Welcome back.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, everyone out there, for the audio issue, but I'm glad to be back. Okay, so Mace Bob on YouTube asks to you, Hiro, do you think we're close to a robot being able to decide to pursue discoveries that the mission planners were unable to identify?
Unfortunately, we are far from it. In my opinion, yes, artificial intelligence made really impressive progress in the past, I guess a decade or so. Everyone knows about it. There are so much news about ChatGPT, for example. But in general, AI works very well as long as its inputs and outputs are confined within computer network. But when it has to handle the real world, it has to handle physical interaction. It's still way behind. For example, I'm a Japanese, so I can easily pick up tofu with chopsticks, right? That's a very hard task for robots. Picking up rocks, drilling a hole. So I don't believe that AI or or autonomy gonna take over humans, particularly in areas of physical interaction and creativity. So it's still far from the time when AI will replace our scientists, in my opinion. But AI is our helpful friends, and as it gets more and more capable, if it can do just 1/10 of what humans can do, we can just move way beyond.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful answer, Hiro. So we have time for 2 more questions. But on
Yeah.
on a similar note, and I really like this one. Well, you'll see why. Josh on YouTube asks, how often is human input needed by the autonomous robots?
It really depends. Depends on the type of the algorithm you make. Learning is not the only way, right? Conventional autonomy algorithms, you can call it classical AI, is basically something that human engineers design, right? Instead of let it learn by itself, right? So engineers design how it could behave, and you turned on, then it keeps going, right? There are learning algorithms, and there are algorithms that needs to be supervised, that needs examples to be trained. There are algorithms that can self-train, it can teach itself. There are algorithms, it gets feedback from people, like teacher and students. Students do some work, and teachers gives feedback, and so there are many different ways. So we cannot say, I cannot give a simple answer, but it depends.
Understood. Okay, last question. I'm sorry to not get to all of your questions. They are actually amazing, so I'm hoping we can send all of these over to Hiro, just so he knows what's on
Sorry,
your
I guess I
mind.
spoke too much. I should have.
No, you didn't.
spent more
You
time
spoke
on-
just the right amount. This one, this one I'm very excited to ask. So, what is one of your favorite moments that you've experienced of our solar system through a robot?
Oh,
It's a good one.
the question was, what's the best moment?
Yeah, essentially, what's your favorite moment, right? Operating these rovers, you've experienced something that so few people get to experience. Maybe you can think of one moment. I'm sure there's many, though.
Yeah, I think it's still the landing of Perseverance, the moment, because, yeah, it's not because I was involved in landing. That was not my job. But, simply because, if it doesn't land well, then, everything that I did before was, go away, right? But also, I don't know, as a team, as a project, hundreds, maybe thousands of people, spent so many years to, make this happen. And it hinged on this, 7 minutes of terror, how this, autonomous robot can do its job by itself. And we were so anxious to watching it. And when this, confirmation signal came back from Mars, we are on Mars, that was really a, moment for me.
Amazing. On that note, Brian, yeah, I know you will close us out. Thank you, Hiro.
Thank you. No, thank you both very much. That is all the time that we have for tonight. Please join us in April when we discuss Earth and the EMIT mission. I would personally like to thank Christopher, Colin, Max, Bill, Corey, Robert, Gabby, Emily, Rachel, Mark, Curtis, Nikki, Amanda, the Kims, Joey, and everyone behind the scenes who make these public talks possible. It truly does take a team. I would like to thank our co-host Rachel and our speaker Hiro for the passion, expertise, and general awesomeness. Our final thank you is to you, the audience, who join us every single month. This is your space program, and it is our honor to bring you these monthly talks. Stay safe, stay kind, stay curious, and we'll see you next month.